Opening titles in white text, the demographic dance-off presents Face to Face. Deaf performer Elvin stands centre, communicating in Auslan.
Elvin, the demographic dance-off, would like to acknowledge the land of the Wurrung and the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, in which we gather. We acknowledge elders, both past, present and emerging, and any Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be here today as well.
Elvin and Chelle stand opposite facing each other 3 metres apart in the upper back corridor of the space behind a 10-metre wide length of sheer curtain hung from the ceiling. There are 2 sheer walls as such, creating 3 performance corridors, the front, middle and back. They sign communicate. Both hands are cupped in a C shape. They alternate back and forth. Their sign changes to space. One hand is held as a fist in front, while the other hand flat and open circles above, slowly signing space. They are backlit by natural light spilling in from the 3 small windows of the theatre. They now sign breathe. Open flat hands on chest, pulse out and in, as if the hands themselves are breathing. The sign changes to the word consider. Both index fingers in hook shape are raised to their temples, making small circles rotating round and round. They stop and exit off screen left. And they walk on again to the front with backs turned. They face the curtain, standing apart. Chelle signs breathe consistently, while Elvin to her right breathes their hands into the soft wall, collecting air and breath towards his chest. Around and above, out and around again with wide open arms, sweeping and enveloping breath. The curtain moves and floats with each touch, where each touch gently shifts the light and shadow across its surface. Elvin stops and walks to a new position to the left of Chelle, standing apart. Elvin signs communicate consistently, while Chelle's C-shaped hands broadly extend out into the curtain. Brushing arms in wide circular motions, she sways and rocks. And with open palms offering communication to behind and through the curtain. Chelle seeks communication searchingly, looking through to the empty space beyond, gesturing invitingly, offering welcome. Chelle stops and now walks down to the left of Elvin, who is signing space. Fist and open hand above now expand and mark a large space into the curtain and around his body. Elvin's arms collect space high and above, tracing down. Fingers reach out to the tips of space to his left and to his right. With hands moving forward and out, he is as if parting the curtain again and again, carving space into it. Elvin stops. Fade to an image of a sound operator iron Rose's hands on a square device that flashes lights to the touch. They look down as they press different white circular buttons, creating pulsing patterns for the music that plays in this work. Elvin and Chelle are in the upper back corridor, with two curtains dividing them from audience. They are more at distance. Elvin on left signs consider, while Chelle to the right moves animatedly on the spot. Taking her hooked-shaped fingers into the curtain, picking at it, circling consider questioningly, then as a thought in the air around her, and continuing to explore consider below at her feet and beyond the curtain wall. Chelle remains. Elvin moves to the right. He signs breathe and breathes repeatedly. Chelle's breaths, one by one, are carried into the curtain and then carried again and let go into the floor with weighted shoulders. Her breaths hover over and cover her face, unavailingly. Palms open, she raises them to the heights above, imploring. And clearing space, her breaths and hands sweep the air aside and away. Chelle moving down to the right of Elvin, he signs space. With fist remaining stable, the circling arm juts around and into the soft wall. Unleashed, his arms now arc large circles marking edges to a space that constantly moves and shifts, the creases and crevices of a hung curtain, where his own shadow dances incongruently and fragmented from his physical form. Elvin and Chelle exit off-screen left. Windows of light behind ruffled but still curtains remain. They re-enter into the front performance space, meters apart, but face to face. Chelle with cheeky smile pokes shoulder and arm of Elvin. He's thrust away and rebalances again. With fingers holding imaginary strings, Chelle plucks Elvin's elbow without touch to activate puppet-like motions at her whim. She pushes both hands out. Elvin's body and head is propelled backwards. Then tauntingly, she pulls him back in, and before he can recenter himself, she pokes knee, shoulder, then swipes his face one way and then the other. Pulling string from his chest, she pinches him forwards and backwards again, to then poke him, center of the forehead. Poke, poke, push, pull, conducting the puppetry of his body, raising him and allowing him to collapse. Control changes, still without touch. Elvin pokes Chelle, swiping, suppressing, raising her with gestures. He pokes her knees buckle. He plucks shoulder strings. She rises and falls. He tugs her towards him. She steps forward. He pushes her away. She stumbles backwards, prodded, pushed and goaded. Impulsive commands constantly unsettle Chelle's body and balance. Until they stop. Elvin exits off screen left. Chelle remains in front. Elvin enters to the middle corridor performance space. Fade to Iron Rose's hands on sound device again. Lights flash as buttons are touched. Iron Rose's face, concentrating with deep listening. Chelle signs, anyone? Moving hands outwards and away from each other, index fingers suddenly appear and turn to point upwards. Anyone? Elvin takes the pointed finger, for the pointed finger to take Elvin to all the various places it is pointing to, behind him, and then he travels there, ahead of him, travelling there. Elvin swiftly moving through the space in all directions, erratically. He notices the divide of the soft curtain wall and throws himself into it, grasping in the end nothing but air. As if lost, disoriented, he searches again, further down the wall, grabbing, seizing, clutching, nothing. Elvin exits off-screen left, Chelle 2. They swap positions. Chelle in the middle space, Elvin in front. He signs consider, looking round, hooked index fingers twirling against temple. Lighting is pale pink. Chelle's hooked fingers swell wide into and close to the curtain. She too is looking around, hands guiding her search to open inquiring arms wide. Always looking, considering who is there or not. Chelle searches in space, eyes darting this way and that. Hands are twirling inwards, gesturing people to come in. Her hands are open wide, empty. Elvin and Chelle swap places again. Chelle at the front signs connection. On both hands, index and thumb interconnect into each other to make two small rings. Moving back and forth, they emphasize connection. Elvin in middle, his arms become the long circular rings, where one weaves in and through the other and escapes up and out. Another arm offers the beginning of connection, while the other traces itself into its space and escapes again to above and high, not able to establish full interconnection. Elvin tries and tries, sweeping out to the side, attempting to collect a connection, but arms remain disconnected in their own separate spiraling orbits. At times, the small circular rings formed by index and thumb lock into each other and flutter around, but split off. Elvin's length, spine, back and arms then become rounded, amplifying, rotating. Smaller connections are made in fingers that find each other, interconnect, twirl and swirl, then pop apart, come together again, burst open, disconnecting, connecting rhythmically. Chelle and Elvin swap places. Elvin to the front, Chelle in the middle. Lighting has changed to cool blue. Elvin signs breathe. Open flat hands wafting in and out from chest. Chelle breathes and kneads breath around and into the ground. As if massaging gentle balls of air to the space surrounding her below. hands to chest, absorbing. Her head tilting up, eyes closed, a moment of total presence and in serene company with breath, from which she offers calm and peaceful gestures of giving to the front, but then alters to an awareness that they are not received or taken. A sense of abandonment and loss, her breathing hands settle and cover a certain type of anguish on her face before a final unrequited offering. Chelle exits off-screen left to the front, Elvin in the middle corridor once again. Chelle signs retreat, thumbs up hands, turn in, and each roll around each other towards self, retreating. The body too leans back as the hands sign retreat. The mood of lighting has changed to a cooler, darker blue. The gesture of retreat in Elvin's hands are powerful and take him withdrawing backwards. And before completely overcome, he rises to centre to pivot and pirouette on foot momentarily, liberated and free. Retreat comes over him again, propelling him away. And once again, a glimpse of an unfettered pirouette recenters him before another surge of retreat offsets his equilibrium. A final swap. Chelle comes to the middle and Elvin to the front again. Elvin marks the sign energy, tracing the upper muscle of the forearm from elbow to shoulder, and bubble, two hands as if grasping a ball or bubble, energy bubble. Chelle's energy from arm leaps high and flickers around her feet, also frenetically stepping and leaping around, almost running. Both arms mark huge bubbles all along the corridor, painting spheres along the curtain. Filled with positive energy, building up, Chelle does a cartwheel and bops around the space merrily. Relaxing again, she calmly paints a large bubble sphere, openly to all. Chelle exits off-screen left, Elvin off-screen right. Chelle ducks across along the front, off-screen right again. All but the curtains remain softly billowing in the space. Almost imperceptibly, through two-layered sheer curtains, the form of Elvin is in the upper back corridor getting into position, centred in line with the middle back window of the theatre. Elvin is performing contemporary ballet, a repertoire comprising of leaps and bounds and elements of all the Auslan signs, physically and poetically interpreted through the body. He weaves in collapsing like a puppet to the floor, pushed, pulled and plucked, his long arms attempting large connections that never quite interconnect or lock, before plummeting to the floor again, puppet-like. He points to the right, summoning Chelle to enter as he steps away and back, retreating. He enters the middle space, to stand opposite Chelle with the curtain dividing both. This is the apart dance. Sign and communicate, Chelle is steady, unwavering. Elvin's C-shaped limbs swipe left and right, trying to break through. Chelle's sign turns into space, stable fist with flat circling hand above. Invigorated, Elvin attempts to cut through the divide and carve space towards her and beyond his realm more urgently, Disturbing the curtain wall more vigorously, it shifts and swings and sways against Chelle's form behind. Chelle now signs breathe, allowing Elvin to collect breaths. He bows more broadly and composed. Chelle shifts the sign to consider, hook-shaped index fingers provoking different expressive thoughts from the hands of Elvin, from his mind and head. Chelle leaves. Elvin turns to face front. He performs another iteration of his contemporary solo, weaving Auslan into poetic physical reinterpretations amongst the pool of invisible strings that push and pull at him like a puppet. He rises to connection before collapsing again, before rising once more. He points to the left, drawing in Chelle to inhabit the middle world. As he makes his way to the back, Chelle's signs communicate. With Elvin in backdrop, his large gestures on the curtain wall contort shadows into dancing and movement themselves. At times, C-shaped hands stamp in the background, punctuating communicate, communicate. Elvin leaves, Chelle signs space. Elvin leaps into the middle space behind Chelle. It's an interlude of ballet. Arms then gather space towards him, touching the two boundaries of curtain behind and in front. He makes his way to the back again. Chelle breathes. Elvin's breaths imploring the curtain. Chelle signs consider, where Elvin's considered hooked index fingers demand the divide quickly and pressingly. Both in same instance raise their arms high above, simultaneously in unison, open palms trace down the length of the curtain. Each walk backwards away from each other, exiting off-screen in opposite directions. Chelle and Elvin walk back on stage together. Standing side by side, they are smiling and bow to the audience. Hands raised, joyfully shaking, they applaud in Auslan. Elvin Lamb, dancer, performer, poetic Auslan and co-creator. Elvin Lamb, choreography, apart dance. Chelle Destefano, performer, poetic Auslan and co-creator. Iron Rose, sound artist and co-creator. Pearl Blackk, creative access director, producer and co-creator. Vitae Veritas, audio description. Fleur Dean, costume and set design and make. Auslan interpretation by Auslan Services Australia. Elvin Lamb, acknowledgement to country. Underground media, video production, editing and captioning. The Demographic Dance-Off thanks the following supports: Australia Council for the Arts, Midsumma Festival, Footscray Community Arts.